The player collapsed during practice at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like any other. Jordan Matthews, 17, star quarterback, was running drills when his heart simply stopped. No warning, no previous symptoms, just a healthy kid suddenly dying on the 50-yard line, while 40 teammates watched in horror. Coach Williams was 70 feet away when it happened, but he covered that distance in seconds that felt like hours. What the players didn't know, what the school board didn't know when they hired him 2 years ago, was that before Michael Williams coached high school football in Charleston, South Carolina, he'd spent 12 years as an Army Ranger medic. Not the kind who worked in field hospitals. The kind who parachuted into combat zones and kept soldiers alive until helicopters could reach them. The kind who'd performed emergency procedures under enemy fire that most ER doctors never attempt. Jordan Matthews had maybe 4 minutes before brain death. Coach Williams had done this before, but never on a kid wearing his own team's jersey. Welcome to Life Stories Archive, where the people teaching our children sometimes carry skills that save lives. Riverside High School's football program had been struggling for years before Coach Williams arrived in 2021. The team hadn't made playoffs in 5 seasons, attendance was down, and the program was being discussed for budget cuts. Michael Williams, 44, had applied for the position with credentials that seemed modest: assistant coaching experience at a small college, some volunteer work with youth sports, a degree in education he'd earned online while transitioning from military service. His military background was listed simply as U.S. Army, 2005 to 2019 Medical Services. The athletic director, impressed by his passion and his ideas for rebuilding the program, hired him without digging deeper into what medical services meant in a military context. Coach Williams transformed the program not through flashy plays or recruiting stars, but through discipline, conditioning, and a focus on fundamentals. He ran practices like military drills, precise, purposeful, demanding, but fair. Players respected him because he demanded excellence, but never asked for anything he wouldn't do himself. Coach Williams doesn't yell, players would say. He just looks at you, and you know you can do better. What they didn't realize was that his calm under pressure came from years of making life-or-death decisions in situations where panic meant people died. October 17th was a standard Tuesday practice. The team was preparing for Friday's game against their crosstown rivals. The weather was perfect. Crisp autumn air, clear sky, ideal conditions. Jordan Matthews was having a great practice. The senior quarterback had college scouts interested, and he was playing like he knew every throw mattered. Confident, focused, executing plays with precision. At 3:47 p.m., during a routine passing drill, Jordan released a perfect spiral to his receiver, started to jog back to the huddle, and then stumbled. Not dramatically, just a slight loss of balance, like he'd tripped over his own feet. Then he fell, not forward like someone tripping, down like his entire body had shut off simultaneously. For a split second, everyone thought it was a joke. Jordan was known for his sense of humor, but the way he fell, completely limp, no attempt to catch himself, wasn't right. Coach Williams was working with the defensive line 70 feet away. He looked up at the sudden silence, the kind of silence that only happens when something is catastrophically wrong. He saw Jordan on the ground, not moving. Saw players starting to gather around, uncertain, scared. And in that instant, 12 years of combat medicine training overrode everything else. Everyone back! Give me space! Coach Williams's voice carried across the field with command authority nobody had heard from him before. Not angry, surgical. The voice of someone who'd given orders in situations where hesitation meant death. He was at Jordan's side in seconds, already assessing. No breathing, no pulse. The kid's lips were already starting to turn blue. Sudden cardiac arrest. Probably an undiagnosed heart condition that had been waiting to kill him. If Coach Williams had been a normal high school football coach, Jordan would have been dead before the ambulance arrived. But Michael Williams wasn't a normal coach. Someone call 911. Tell them we have a cardiac arrest. 17-year-old male. No pulse. CPR in progress. He was already starting chest compressions, his hands positioned with the precision of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. His assistant coach, frozen in shock, stammered, "Should we wait for the paramedics?" "No! Get the AED from the athletic building. Now." The automatic external defibrillator was required equipment, but most schools never used them, never thought they'd need to. Coach Williams kept compressions going. Perfect rhythm, perfect depth, perfect technique. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. The same pattern he'd performed on soldiers in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in places where the closest hospital was an hour away by helicopter. "Come on, Jordan. Stay with me, kid. Come on." The assistant coach returned with the AED, hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. Coach Williams took it without stopping compressions, ripped open Jordan's practice jersey, and applied the pads with practiced efficiency. "Everyone clear." The AED analyzed Jordan's heart rhythm. "Shock advised." Coach Williams delivered the shock. Jordan's body convulsed, but there was no response. Still no pulse. He went back to compressions immediately. "Come on, Jordan. You don't get to quit on me. Not today." Players were crying now. Some had called parents. The assistant coach was on the phone with 911, giving updates. But Coach Williams's focus never wavered. He'd been trained to perform under pressure that high school kids couldn't imagine. Incoming fire, casualties piling up, resources limited, and still you worked the problem until you won, or there was nothing left to do. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, check pulse, nothing. Analyzing rhythm, the AED announced. Shock advised. Second shock, still nothing, back to compressions. Coach Williams's arms were burning. High-quality CPR is exhausting, but his form never degraded. Muscle memory from hundreds of training sessions and too many real-world applications. "Coach, the ambulance is 5 minutes out," someone said. 5 minutes was an eternity. But it was also manageable. Because in Afghanistan, Coach Williams had kept soldiers alive for 30 minutes or more until helicopters arrived. 5 minutes was nothing. Third shock. And this time, a pulse. Weak, irregular, but present. Jordan gasped, a horrible rattling breath, but a breath nonetheless. Paramedics arrived to find Coach Williams, maintaining Jordan's airway, monitoring his pulse, and keeping him stable. The lead paramedic took one look at the scene, the professional CPR technique, the proper AED application, the organized emergency response, and knew this wasn't a lucky save by a high school coach. "Sir, what's your medical training?" Coach Williams was focused on Jordan, wouldn't leave his side until he was loaded into the ambulance. "Army Ranger medic, 12 years, mostly combat zones." The paramedic nodded with professional respect. "You saved his life. Another minute without CPR, and we'd be having a different conversation. At the hospital, doctors discovered Jordan had a congenital heart defect called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a condition that kills young athletes without warning every year. It's why CPR training matters. It's why AEDs exist in schools. But training and equipment are worthless without someone who knows how to use them under pressure. Jordan Matthews survived because his coach had performed the same procedure under enemy fire, with limited equipment, in conditions that made a high school practice field look like an operating room. The story spread quickly through Charleston. The high school coach who'd saved a player's life. Local news wanted interviews. Parents wanted to thank him. The school board wanted to honor him. But when they started researching Coach Williams's background, trying to prepare proper recognition, they discovered something remarkable. Staff Sergeant Michael Williams, 75th Ranger Regiment. Combat medic deployed 5 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. 3 Bronze Stars, 2 Army Commendation Medals with Valor Device. Over 200 documented combat casualty treatments, with a survival rate that exceeded most field hospitals. He'd left the Army in 2019, not because he wanted to, but because an IED blast had left him with hearing damage that disqualified him from combat deployment. He could still serve, just not in the field anymore. So he'd become a high school football coach. Not as a backup plan, but as a continuation of his mission, taking care of people, building them up, preparing them for challenges, and being ready when emergencies happened. Coach Williams, the principal asked during a private meeting, "Why didn't you tell us about your background when we hired you?" Michael was uncomfortable with the attention, the same way he'd been uncomfortable with medals and citations. "Ma'am, you needed a football coach. That's what I applied to be. But your experience, my experience is why I'm good at the job, but it's not why I wanted the job." He looked out at the practice field, where Jordan had collapsed 3 days earlier. "I wanted to work with kids, help them become better people. The medical training is just insurance I hoped I'd never need to use." Jordan Matthews made a full recovery. He underwent surgery to correct his heart condition, and, though he couldn't play football anymore, became a student coach, working alongside Coach Williams and learning about leadership from someone who demonstrated it under the worst possible conditions. "Coach saved my life," Jordan told reporters. "But what's crazy is that he treats it like it was just part of practice, like it wasn't a big deal. For Coach Williams, it wasn't a big deal. It was what you did when someone needed help. The same way you ran drills when players needed development. The same way you called plays when the team needed direction. The school implemented comprehensive emergency medical training for all coaches and staff, using Coach Williams as the lead instructor. Within a year, 2 other coaches had used CPR training to save lives, 1 student, 1 adult, at school events. Riverside High's football program continued to improve, not because of dramatic changes, but because of consistent excellence. The kind that comes from a leader who knows that preparation matters, discipline saves lives, and the only way to handle crisis is with calm, focused action. Coach Michael Williams still runs practice every afternoon at Riverside High School, still demands excellence, still builds young people into better versions of themselves. The military awards sit in a box in his closet, the same place most veterans keep their decorations, acknowledged but not displayed. What matters isn't the medals or the recognition. What matters is that Jordan Matthews is alive to attend college, to build a life, to become whatever he chooses to become. What matters is that 40 kids learned that day what real leadership looks like under pressure. Some teachers show students algebra and history. Coach Williams taught them that expertise matters, that training saves lives, and that the person standing in front of you might be carrying capabilities you can't imagine. He didn't become a coach to be a hero. He became a coach to serve, to build, to continue the mission in a different uniform. The fact that his training saved a life wasn't the point. It was the insurance policy every parent hopes exists, but prays never needs to be used. Have you ever realized someone teaching your children had experience that made them uniquely qualified to handle emergencies? Share their story in the comments, because the people shaping the next generation sometimes carry skills that do more than teach. They save lives. If this story reminded you that expertise shows up in unexpected places, subscribe to Life Stories Archive. Every quiet professional deserves recognition for being prepared for moments that change everything.